Welcome back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. Yet again, the not so weekly, almost weekly review of news with Drago Bosnic. Drago, how you doing?
I'm great. Great being here as always.
Excellent. Let me turn up your volume a little bit. I think that'll be better. We've got a bunch of articles today. We've got some memes. Everybody who's new here, hi, welcome. This is a comedy show. Nothing here is real or has anything to do with reality. Legally speaking. Also, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And thank you to the Patreons and the people who buy me coffee. Now, let's get to the news. Let's see what we've got here. We've got Putin and Steinmeier's different treatment in the Middle East indicates shifting geopolitical paradigm. My reading is a little bit slow. Tell me, what do you mean difference in treatment? I didn't see any difference. I don't know what you're talking about. I saw the German flag and all kinds of stuff too.
That's exactly what it is. It's Russian propaganda. Obviously, the German president was the one who was greeted as a king, I guess, and Putin was sidelined. In all seriousness, we've all seen that. And to answer your question from the last time, I checked which jets were painting the German flag.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was actually, it's funny. It was an Italian jet that was made on a Russian license. Like it was like a license-built version of a Russian Yak 130. I think it's Aramaki 556, something like that. I'm not sure what the number is, but it is essentially like an Italian version of this Russian Yak 130 advanced trainer light attack aircraft, if you want. So that's what it's sort of like a message, you know, like because it's a jet that was based on a Russian design that was built by a Western country painting the Russian flag.
Makes it even more of a message when you put it that way.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what do you think this means, geopolitically speaking? Like, do you think, and taking into consideration, like we said last time, that, you know, he went back to Moscow and then met with President Raisi from Iran right after meeting with the Sunni leaders. What do you think this means for geopolitics, the Middle East, and...
As we all know, like, the Middle East is arguably the most important geopolitical region in the world. Like, who controls the Middle East essentially controls much of the world, or most of the world, because it's centered in an area which is packed with these like sea lanes, which are of global importance, and especially for stuff like oil and, let's say, goods from China coming into Europe and so on. And we see that by the fact that the Americans are now attacking the Houthis in Yemen because they are disrupting their supply lines and sea lanes in the Red Sea and the area that is coming from the Arab Sea into the Red Sea. And of course, like, if we think about it, like, whoever controls the Middle East really does have an upper hand over anyone else who doesn't. And the Americans have been projecting power through military force and destruction in the region, which obviously made them extremely unpopular. Not to mention what's going on now in Gaza between Israel and Palestinians. And of course, all of this is like contributing to the fact that the Middle East is shifting towards other global powers away from the West. Of course, it's just not going to happen overnight. This is like a very long-term process, but it has already started. And we see that in these like seemingly unimportant formal events, like what happened with Steinmeier and Putin. And like, obviously, Steinmeier was going to Qatar and Putin was going to the United Arab Emirates and the Saudi Arabia. Those are different countries, obviously, but still, like, it still shows the shift in the paradigm by the simple fact that these two leaders were greeted starkly differently.
Yeah, the Houthis are kicking ass. That's all I can say. It's like, yeah. Everything that every Arab has ever wanted to do is being done by the Houthis, basically. And as far as the IDF in Gaza, I've got a meme. Pretty accurate, I think. Pretty accurate. I don't think we need to say anything about it because
it's not even a meme anymore. I'm not sure if it's a meme anymore.
it's. I don't know what the definition of a meme is, but I'm pretty sure it's a meme that's become reality slash.
Yeah. As for since you mentioned them, I'm completely amazed by these guys. Like, they have very little food, very little in terms of like logistics and supplies, but they keep kicking ass of Saudi military, and now essentially, I mean, not yet, but still, like they're just like tying in a lot of American forces in the Middle East, which is directly helping the Palestinians, unlike what the Saudis and these other countries that are like fake Arabs, we could say, doing. So the simple fact that, like, for example, Saudi Arabia is claiming that it's against Israel, but they are shooting down Houthi missiles fired at Israel. So that tells you
Not
a lot
only that,
about,
but they were hosting that like climate conference thing, and they hosted the Israeli delegation. So like, no comment.
yeah.
Let's move on to how should I label this? Terminator and the end of the world and Skynet. I don't know. You want to clue us into what's going on here while I dig up a meme?
Well, that one is essentially what it is and what it sounds like. The Pentagon is actively pursuing AI weapons because they consider that's the only way they can defeat China and Russia, specifically China in this case. This was like a report about a woman called, whose last name is Jenkins, I think. I forgot her first name. And the interesting thing is, she was like the Pentagon's go-to girl for like the keeping all these like weapons control, arms control agreements together during the Obama administration and Trump administration as well. And guess what? Like, every arms control treaty that she was handling is now gone. The ones with the Russians, with other countries, and so on. And now she's been given the task of implementing the AUKUS, the Australia, UK, and the US agreement that's aimed against China. And now she's insisting that they will responsibly use, and I'm quoting, they will use the AI warfare responsibly. So, like, she's the one who had to control, like, she had to keep the arms control agreements alive, and all of those are gone now. And now she's talking about responsibly using AI warfare. Like, what can we expect? Like, there's no way there's China, right?
It could be just a coincidence. I don't think the Pentagon would do something like that on purpose.
I think partly Russian propaganda.
Probably, yeah, probably. Shall we move on to like Kiev running out of American money?
Sure, of course. Like, maybe a better title would have been, "Why is the Kiev regime running out of American money?" But still, like, that will do, I guess, for now.
Can I guess why? Because Russia is corrupt.
yeah, that's the reason, obviously. But like, in all seriousness, it all comes down to the American political system. And what most people don't know is that it's not that America is running out of money. Like, it would be ludicrous that the country that is literally printing money, like, into oblivion, would run out of money. No, that's not what's happening. What actually is happening is that the GOP now controls the Congress. I mean, the Republicans control the Congress. And now they want to bleed dry the DNC, the Democrats, of all financing, or most of the financing, because what most people might have forgotten is that one of the reasons why the DNC is insisting on all these money transfers to the Zelensky regime is because a lot of that money actually comes back, and then they use it for campaigns and whatnot. And now
you're saying that there's kickbacks and like corruption in the American system?
Yeah, like, I mean, I know it's incredibly difficult to believe.
Imagine, fathom, even.
Yeah, it's very difficult to imagine that because they've always been very honest, obviously. But yeah, it happens. I guess it was all accidental. But like, in all seriousness, if people remember the FTX scandal when Bankman-Fried had to admit that he was like basically sending money to Ukraine just so this money could go back to the DNC's coffers in the US. Well, this is it. This is just like, that was just one portion of it. Like, the vast majority of that money is going through other channels. and it's very difficult to follow it. So, but it's ending in the hands of the DNC, and of course for the GOP this was unacceptable. So what they did is not because they don't dislike or like the Kiev regime, it's just that they realize that it's in their political interest that the DNC runs dry of financing, essentially. So that's why they did it.
The next article you've got here for us is mainstream propaganda. I don't know what you're talking about. You mean like the people who always tell the truth and told us to get vaccinated?
Yeah. For example, those people who are very worried about our health. Yeah, and honest. In this specific article, I quoted the Wall Street Journal and the CNN, both extremely truthful and sometimes pro-Russian, I guess. Well, they were saying essentially all the, they were repeating all the talking points we've been hearing for the last 2 years, that Russia is still like too weak, that Russia cannot launch any meaningful offensive operation, and that Ukrainians have a chance. They just have to try to fight the Russians without any American money, without any American support, hold out for a few years and then launch another counteroffensive that's going to reach the Ural Mountains, I guess.
Kamchatka Peninsula. Yeah, right. I don't know what to tell you, but I think this is the Daily Mail. Is it the Daily Mail? Hold on, let's see. Can I see here? Is this the Daily Mail? I can't see. It's a UK newspaper, and it's got Putin plastered. Like, you think that they're losing? The West, I mean?
Oh, well, I would be careful, and this is what exactly what the Russians are doing. They don't want to rush any counteroffensives because, like, anytime you launch any offensive operation, that requires a lot of men, and it's generally easy to, or relatively easy to defend in the era of drones, where you see everything all the time, and you get like constant feedback. Well, the high command gets constant feedback from the front lines, and they can like shift attention to different parts of the front line when it's necessary. So that's what the Russians are going slowly and carefully. Like, they're not rushing it like the Ukrainians are doing in the last several months.
It was the Daily Telegraph, not the Daily Mail. And we've also got the Washington Post removing war in Ukraine section. That's, I think, like a big headline that we should celebrate. What do you have to say about Washington Post?
Well, just it perfectly ties in to what NATO's Secretary General Mr. Stoltenberg was saying when he said that we have to be ready for bad news. Well, after he said that, all the mainstream media were suddenly decided to remove the possibility of having too many bad news, I guess. So that's why they need to remove that area of their website.
One of my favorite things to talk about is no Nazis in Ukraine.
Yes.
We've got a winner. We've got a winner for the last week or so. This is just, Ukraine in one photo. Thanks to Putinger's cat for this. Yeah, we've got a couple of other shares from Putinger's cat for later.
All I have to say is literally. What else can I say?
I don't know what to say. Hyenas, apparently, in Ukraine.
Those noble animals. Well, essentially, that's what's going on in Ukraine. Like, as Zelensky is fearing of, like, he's very fearful of losing power, obviously, because that oftentimes in the Kiev regime means losing your head too. Now he has to contend with a lot of these new Kiev regime people and a lot of old ones too. So he has Poroshenko, who has reactivated politically, and also Yulia Tymoshenko, like the one that was one of the founders of the original pre-Maidan pro-Western Ukraine after the Orange Revolution in 2004. And you also have people who are generally close to Zelensky who might turn their backs on him. Like, for example, the Budanov guy, he's the GOR guy. Also, like other people, like for example, Orestovich, he could also like reactivate against Zelensky, and he knows a lot of like dirty laundry of the Kiev regime, so he could use that for political gain in the country. I'm not sure like who would take power, but there are a lot of people who could, for example, Zelensky, because he leads the military and they've got the vast majority of the funds from the political West. So they do have like the resources to stage a revolt of some kind. And obviously, the Russians are not going to stop that because it's in their interest for that to happen. So it's like the next year is going to be interesting in that regard.
The next year is definitely going to be interesting. I got a meme about that later. But first, let's get through this. This is hilarious. The president is Vladimir. The general is Valery. And the dissident number one is Alexei. in both cases.
Yeah.
It's almost like as if this is all staged.
Yeah.
I think this is all staged? I don't think so. Finland's new defense deal with the U.S. eerily reminds of some failed artist deal. What do you... Yeah. I can't comment on this. This is pure comedy, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. The image is very important. The one where we saw the failed painter, and the other guy was the General Mannerheim, who was like the Finnish leader during World War II, and he made a not so lucky deal with the painter, and of course we know how that ended, with Finland being on the losing side. And they were lucky because Stalin was very keen on giving Finland neutrality.
What do you mean Finland losing? Didn't the Russians lose the Russo-Finnish war like 3 times? Isn't that the trope that everybody says? The Russians lost?
That's the trope. But the thing is, they didn't lose. Like they did like in the first Soviet-Finnish war.
They lost forward, like they're losing forward now. They lost by gaining territory.
Exactly. So that's essentially what happened. But still, like the Russians weren't that focused on Finland, just like they're not now either. However, it seems that the Finnish authorities are doing everything to put themselves into the focus of a neighbor with 6,000 nukes. That's a very kind
of like the Poles, huh? Just like the Poles. The Poles were doing that before.
I could understand the Polish-Russian rivalry because there's centuries of rivalry there. But the thing is, like, the Finns wouldn't exist as a nation without Russia. Like, most people don't know that Finns would have all been like Swedenized or whatever the term is without the Russians. The Russians, when they conquered Finland from the Swedes, they gave them the area that was called the Grand Duchy of Finland, and mostly like it had the Russian military there, the Imperial Army, but there was nothing else of the Russian institutions that was like enforced in the Finns. They spoke Finnish and Swedish. Like, can you imagine like having over a century of Russian rule and most of your population doesn't even speak Russian, and you had like even less of Swedish rule, but like a lot of people in Finland speak Swedish, which tells you a lot about how the Russians were viewing Finns and how they behaved towards them. So I don't understand the enmity. Like, why would the Finns go against Russia? They have zero reasons to do so. And by inviting the Americans in, and now they're giving like 15 bases to the Americans, like, why would you do that? Because you're going to become the primary target all of a sudden. So like, there's no reason unless it's for the American offensive purposes, which is what I think it is.
I don't know. All this, history stuff that you bring up, it sounds like our favorite time traveling propaganda. I don't think any of that was real. Will the political West transfer 300 billion of stolen Russian assets to Kiev? I didn't read this, but my take is they want to and they won't. How close am I?
They want to, like, it's not 100% sure answer, like in terms of yes or no, because first of all, the U.S. is not going to give them anything anymore because the GOP is blocking it, as we mentioned before. On the other hand, like, they need to do that in order to prevent the Kiev regime from losing completely in the next several months. On the other hand, they have all these Russian assets they've frozen, or I mean, euphemism for stolen, essentially. stolen from Russia, and it's all sitting in Western banks, and they could just do what they could do is they could send it to the Ukrainians, and in this way they like kill two birds with one stone. Like they ensure that the Kiev regime has continued funding, and also they hurt Russia in the process. On the other hand, if they do that, they've essentially broken like a billion of their own laws, which prevent the usage of someone else's property for such a purpose. So if they do that, they might destroy their own financial system. But if they don't, they will lose in Ukraine. So it's a very, very difficult decision to make for them, I guess.
Which circles back to will Ukraine get U.S. money? The source of printing all money, basically. Speaking of money, thank you to everyone who's donated. Bought me a coffee. Makes the show go. And the update is I still haven't withdrawn any money. But in any case, what's the next thing that we've got here? Got another 3 articles, another like 15 memes. Let's do China. The latest China-EU summit exposes Brussels' complete lack of sovereignty. What do you mean Brussels' complete lack of sovereignty? She's a gynecologist.
pretty much. But like this was like a summit that was held earlier in December, and only now do we see the results of it. And the last one was held in 2019, and it was like on relatively friendly terms. Like the China and the EU officials were all smiling, posing for photos, talking about the future, and so on. And of course, in 4 years, even though it's a relatively short period of time, a bunch of things changed. We got COVID, of course. We got the SMO, and so on and so on. And now, instead of like talking about economics, which was the main topic of this summit, what the Europeans were doing, they were like repeating American talking points about the evil Chinese doing evil stuff to the Uyghurs, about China, subsidizing its own electric vehicle industry, and so on and so on. I mean, when China does it, obviously it's bad, but when Europe subsidizes its own industries, that's just perfectly normal, right? And they were like talking about this political stuff that has nothing to do with economics. And despite the fact that the Chinese were trying to focus on economic stuff, on economic cooperation and so on. So like the summit was a complete failure, because it's like, can you imagine going to a summit about wine and then suddenly talking about, I don't know, gender studies, something like that?
Yeah. So
that's how stupid it is. Like if we're doing a summit about economics, let's talk about economics, and then we're going to make a separate summit about whatever political issue you have. So essentially, they're just like destroying ties with China, which is going to simply destroy the European economy in the long term, for the sake of the U.S., which is like just leaving Europe hanging, in a potential fight with Russia. So it's crazy.
Leaving them hanging without a pipeline. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, the new Ukrainian Orthodox Church is blessing the McDonald's staff.
Yeah.
What can we say?
They get McDonald's and they take away everything else from them. It's a fair deal, if you ask me.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to bring attention to the fact that yesterday was FSB Day, which will probably be 2 days ago for people who are watching this, if you watch it when it's uploaded. Tovarish, have faith. Democracy in Glasnost will pass. And then the State Security Service will recall your names. Happy FSB Day.
Pretty much.
That's one. And then I think we have another one. Yeah, there we go. And is the FSB watching me? And he gets an SMS. No. So yeah, happy FSB Day to everyone. Let's see what else we've got here. Oh, I came across this the other day. This is our mutual friend, the florist. And he says he found this in an old CSS, and it's like Counter-Strike studies. Because, it's banned. Projection map for the CTSO by 2045. How real do you think the possibilities of something like this are?
Well,
I mean, we've already had the ISW give up, Institute of Study of War, give up Ukraine. So, how do you think this is going to pan out?
Well, I think like it's not completely unreasonable. However, let's see what happens in the future because first of all, we have to make sure that NATO is dismantled, of course, for this to happen. And then the next thing would be to make sure that the elites who were propped up by NATO in these countries are removed. That's going to be a bit harder because NATO is in every crevice of society, essentially, and especially the political and cultural elites of various countries. So, it's not impossible, but it's going to take some time and effort to accomplish something like that. Obviously, I look forward to it. I just don't know how likely it is in the next several years.
Let's circle back to the second last article that we've got lined up here. Kiev's regime to host hawkish officials. Most hawkish officials change tune to low-key defeatism.
Yeah.
Are they being Russian propagandists?
Yeah, it is, essentially. The guy in the picture, his name is Alexei, if I have to say it in Ukrainian. Alexei Reznik, not Reznikov, Danilov. And he's one of the most hawkish Kiev regime officials because he has repeatedly threatened to launch terrorist and sabotage attacks within Russia, which they did after he announced it. And he's been always saying that, the Russians are going to lose, we're going to win, and so on and so on. And now he has suddenly changed the tune after the defeat of their much doubted counteroffensive. And now he's talking about, his confidence in victory, but it's going to be a little bit delayed, by several centuries, I guess. Essentially, this is what he's saying. And this is the first time I've seen him being this pessimistic, and I guess it, tells you a lot.
We've actually covered almost all the memes. And we've got, let me see. Oh, we've got this Venezuelan thing to talk about. Was it the last time we recorded or the one before that? We brought up National Meme, the National Meme Coordination Body. And, we made, you made a parallel. Was it you? It was you who made a parallel, right? Yeah. And then that Maduro is basically the Saddam. Oh, there we go. We have the original meme. Okay. Here is the original meme that we talked about. And then after watching our episode, the National Meme Coordination Body guys made more memes. Televizia presenta clone Star Wars clone of the attack. And also, it's worth noting that this is what it's actually about.
Yeah. It's essentially 70% of Guyana, whatever it's called.
But it's the oil discoveries here that are supposedly the reason for this dispute. I don't know what to say. It's
they actually met the Maduro and the president of Guyana. I forgot his name. They met recently and said they will not use any force, which means they might come to an agreement. It's still going to be the win for the Venezuelans because they might get access to these advanced technologies that Guyana is using to extract oil, which the Venezuelans don't have because of the sanctions that are preventing them from acquiring any modern industrial equipment. So even if they don't get that area, they still might get some concessions that they otherwise wouldn't have had. So it might be a win for Venezuela, definitely.
You're from Serbia. I'm from Serbia. Did you vote?
Yes, I have.
You voted, huh? I didn't vote. I voted last time. This time I was like, meh. I've got a meme here that I shared on my Instagram. Yeah. Everybody who's on Instagram, check out Working Brother there too. Lots of memes, multiple languages. Do you want to tell people who this guy on the left is before we get to the guy on the right and talk about Serbian politics a little bit?
The guy on the left was literally a walking meme guy who was trying
He was
to,
called Bailey, right? He was called White.
yeah.
And he'd always show up in like a white suit everywhere.
Translate his last name, like his obviously like stage last name, which is Preletacevic, which means essentially like the guy like flying over to the other side. And this is like, we have this like Serbian word for people who change, political parties whenever they find it fitting, or if it's in their interest. And we have a bunch of such people, unfortunately. And he was essentially like taunting these people by using that last name. And essentially, he actually won a lot of votes when he ran. Can't remember.
I think it was like 30%. I think it was like 27, 30%, something like that. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. Like he was like a nobody from nowhere that like nobody had heard of, and just came out with this like campaign of like, I'm gonna make everything amazing and excellent. And people were like, let's vote for the guy who's gonna make everything amazing and excellent. But I don't know what happened to him afterwards. Like I think he got elected to some like local parliament, and then he disappeared basically.
Yeah, well, he's simply saw what he was campaigning about. He saw what sort of people politicians are for the most part, unfortunately, and then decided to just not wanting to do anything with those people. And I understand him. Like I'm not surprised at all, because most people who had any sort of contact with politics, if they're normal people, or unless they're compelled, they will simply want out of it essentially.
Which brings us along nicely to the guy on the right, known as Dr. Nestorovic, who, correct me if I'm wrong, he got something like 5% of the vote or something now for the parliament, and he got a parliamentary seat, basically. And he's a conspiracy theorist. He's an anti-vaxxer. He's supposedly pro-family. He has this organization. And I remember during Corona days, I kind of used to be entertained by him. He was famous for saying, this is the stupidest virus ever. So he got some things right, you know what I mean? But in my opinion, from the beginning, he was controlled opposition. And now that... Well, do you want to tell people what the latest gossip is in Serbian politics?
You mean like about the control opposition or something else?
No, I mean about him joining the ruling party after getting the vote.
Like even in the case that he's not controlled opposition, the way that he's been treated by this other opposition, like only like leaves him one option, and that's to make like some sort of a coalition with the ruling party, because he's been called by this pro-Western opposition, he's been called like a lunatic and a I don't know, flat Earth idiot, whatever they were calling him. And all of a sudden, like how can they expect this guy to make a coalition with them if he's effectively being called a moron by these other guys? So like he doesn't need to be the controlled opposition at all for him not to work with the other opposition, So the sad reality is we have like, we have the government that we have, but we have like opposition, which is, most of it is like even worse government. So like it's like a question, which one do you want to choose? Like, do you want to smack in the head, or somebody to keep smacking in your throat? Or in the nuts, I was trying to be polite, but
it's a comedy show. It's okay.
It's a comedy show. So, like, would you like to be smacked in the head, or keep getting small smacks in the nuts? So, like, either way, like, you're done. Nothing good is going to come out of it anyway. So, I guess a lot of people voted for the guy because he was telling the truth for the most part. Like, we can ignore the conspiracy theories or whatever. Like, a lot of it cannot be confirmed, a lot of it cannot be denied, but like we don't have to like disqualify him as a lunatic because he's saying things that may seem crazy now. I mean, Alex Jones sounded crazy like 15 years ago. He doesn't sound so crazy now,
didn't.
Right?
No, he didn't. Like, you know what I mean? No, he didn't.
Like, but the point is, like, to most people, he sounded like a lunatic because, I mean, a lot of it had to do with the way he talked, like shouting. Like people, they're gonna get us, and so on and so on. Like this neurotic, stance. However, what he was saying, like a lot of it was actually true. No matter how crazy it sounds, a lot of it was confirmed over the years. It's just that the reputation he got is such that, like nobody was listening to him, or very few people were listening to him in recent years. So the same is happening to Nestorovic now in Serbia, where he's being like called idiot and so on. And I guess a lot of people were simply like it was their reaction to the pro-Western opposition that was like calling anyone who was not with them idiot. So they simply like wanted to punish the pro-Western opposition by voting for this guy. And the interesting thing is, like, this is like a new party. They didn't even exist before this election, and they essentially they had no infrastructure.
They had no campaign. Yeah, they had no campaign, no nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. Like unless we count the fact that they were very smart in terms of marketing, because what they did is they were like cutting like his long talks from various shows into like 30-second videos where he was saying something, and then they like spread it across the internet on all these like alternative accounts. And this is how most people got information from him. And I guess this contributed to a lot of people voting for him, especially like young people. So it's a good strategy because they had no like budget to speak of, right? They're not a powerful party to be able to like get the best marketing, like what happened with these big parties. So like their success is a surprise, like a negative surprise for the pro-Western opposition, and possibly a negative surprise for the ruling party. We'll see, I guess, or maybe a positive surprise if he is really like controlled opposition. But I guess we'll see in the following months, because he said he will not go, to any like big coalitions with any like ruling party or opposition, whoever. We'll see if he lives up to those expectations, I guess.
He said before he got elected, so he's a politician now. So yeah, I think that covers all the topics.
Yeah,
I want to give a big shout out to all my 11 to 15 people who like all the videos. Thank you. Thumbs up to everyone who supports me in ways that are non-monetary, because that's also cool. Let's also switch to this last article that you've got. Election fraud, impeachment inquiries, prosecution of political opponents. Dun, 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 dun. Can American politics get any worse? I think,
yes,
civil war is looming, so it's going to be good.
Very, very likely. And just before I wrote this like a few days before the Colorado Supreme Court, or was it some other state, I can't remember exactly, banned Trump from participating in the presidential election in 2024 in that state, I guess. Was it Colorado or some other state? I can't remember.
That happened? I didn't know that happened. Is that possible?
Like one of the Supreme Courts of one of the states banned him from the election. So it's a bit it's not a bit insane. It's really insane. I don't know if it ever happened in the history of the U.S. that the entire state, like the deep state, the state institutions, are so openly against one candidate. So, Serbia is a flawed country, or as the Americans would say, we are a flawed democracy. But I don't remember the last time we've had something like that. Like, nobody is arresting political opponents in Serbia. At least we have somewhat free media. We actually, our media is more free than that in the U.S. Those in the U.S. It's crazy, considering that they say we are a flawed democracy. So what does that make them? I guess. And what's going on now is
it's supposed to be a republic, by the way. They're supposed to be a republic.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So what happened now? There was this poll conducted by the Heartland Institute and the Rasmussen report, and they found that at least a fifth of all people who voted, through mail-in ballots, that they essentially committed, voter fraud. And of course, these guys are immediately after this news came out, the Wikipedia page about these guys, the Heartland Institute and the Rasmussen report, got edited, and suddenly, all of a sudden, they were, they couldn't be trusted. Like they were they were not impartial, as the Wikipedia claims now. And also, what happened is that the Congress is now has launched the impeachment inquiry of their president Joe Biden because of his son's legal dealings in Ukraine and other countries. And now, like, we have this political struggle where the Congress is trying to go against the DNC and the official government, while the official government is after Trump. So, like, as you said, it's a looming civil war, essentially, because all these government institutions that are controlled by the Democrats are after Trump, who is like the GOP's biggest chance for a win. And the Congress is after the government because that's the only thing they can do at this point. That's the only institution in the country, the federal institution that they control enough to like hurt the DNC to a certain extent, I guess.
Civil war looming in the U.S. Israel and the Middle East set on fire. Russia about to take Ukraine and go to Germany, Berlin probably, by the way things are looking. I think this meme covers it perfectly. Shout out to my actual brother who sent it along. At first I didn't get it, but for the people who don't know, this is that grenade guy in Lvov. Was it in Lvov? Oh, yeah. Or was it in Chernigov?
I think it was in Western Ukraine, but I can't remember which. Like, it's some small place. I forgot which city, like big city, is closest to it.
Grenade guy. Yeah, so 2024 looks like it's gonna be fun. Anything to cover? Anything you want to point out before we bring this to an end?
Yeah, well, to the people who support the official narrative, I suggest continue reading CNN and Wall Street Journal, and you'll get all the news that you want.
6 to 8 months late, and with a little bit of spin, but you'll get it. You'll get it eventually. The last meme of the day. Everybody who stuck around, thank you. We will be back sooner or later. Drago, thank you for stopping by. Been good as always. See you later, everyone. Have a good one.